My name is Gary Carsley, and I am the artist who initiated RocoColonial. There are 15 artists involved in RocoColonial, and the concept, as might be evident from the rather strange term RocoColonial, endeavours to blend things that we think that we know well in order to produce new meanings. Whilst the edges of historical styles are porous, by 1770, when Marie Antoinette was marrying the future Louis XVI of France in Paris, and Cook was largely completing the missing gaps that make up the map of Australia on the world globe, the Rococo had finished in Europe and the colonial was about to begin in Australia. The frivolity of Marie Antoinette, her personal extravagance, her outrageous hairdos, all of these are characteristics that in the popular mind at least are associated with the Rococo. Esme Timbery is a Bidjigal artist who works with shells and other objects gathered from the seashore to encrust things such as the harbour bridge and little slippers in one of the most distinct and conceptually complex practices in Australian art. What for Esme is particularly important about this work is that these slippers stand in for the children taken from their families in the period of the stolen generation. And it's important to mention that she has, in the course of her life, undertaken thousands of pairs of these tiny, delicate, shell-encrusted slippers. One by one, the pairs of slippers were removed from the centre of the rectangular grid in which they have been traditionally shown and marginalised, placed at the edge of the composition until gradually on the wall emerged a map of white Australia in the form of a Rococo cartouche resembling the map of Australia completed by Cook in 1770. Daney uses a process as cyanotope. It's where the black tones of a black and white image are rendered in blue. Underpinning the Rococo is both Orientalism and chinoiserie. And the chinoiserie is most directly transmitted to us in the form of blue and white. In Portugal, where they are called azulhas, the blue and white tile used a tin glaze. Now this tin glaze is very, very sensitive to atmospheric pollutants. And if we look at the work of Daney's, the way in which aspects of the emulsion have discoloured, Daney is indicating here that there's something wrong with the environment, that we are not looking after it, that we are not honouring the requirement that we transmit to the generations that follow us something of the inheritance that we received from our parents. The tiles, of course, have taken the format of small postcards, and postcards are most commonly associated with sending positive messages, but in this case, the message that's being sent is that we need to be more mindful of the natural environment. Barbecue This Sunday, BYO, is an animated video in which the artists bring to life a painting by the convict artist, journeyman painter and serial forger Joseph Lycett. With respect to the relationship of Joan Ross's hacking of Lycett in Barbecue This Sunday, BYO, it demonstrates two things that link the present to the past. The first is the way in which the work acknowledges millennia of Indigenous ownership, as expressed through their careful management of their traditional lands, which produced the park-like appearance of the Australian bush attested to by many early colonial intruders. The second speaks more directly to the rigid class structures of the 18th century, in which privilege, as well as disadvantage, were expressed sartorially or through clothes. More than any other artist, Mark Newson
has focused on the chaise longue. The Rococo is defined stylistically by asymmetry and curvilinear serpentine forms. And perhaps the most important room was the salon, in which guests were entertained and refined conversations were enacted. Louise Zhang's Chinese-Australian ancestry allows her to access an encyclopedia of monstrous beings who are not so much born again as undead. For thousands of years, objects of great beauty and sophistication of fabrication were transacted along the Silk Road across the Eurasian landmass from east to west. Among the exquisitely rendered images adorning the vases, plates, urns and bowls coming out of China and into the aristocratic collections of Europe were the fabulous monsters and demons of Eastern myth. What the Rococo can provide, particularly for an Australia that is finally acknowledging its geographical location, is an historical context for the influence of the art of Asia upon that of the West.
Asia Noble has displayed several gigantic wigged severed heads. Hair, curiously, is both nature and culture. It grows out of our bodies but is somehow strangely lifeless. There is an unsettling and troubling aspect to hair. This echoes some of the anxieties that are embedded in the Rococo. Amongst the extravagances of Marie Antoinette were her hairstyles, which often approximated almost a metre in height. The first celebrity hairdresser was in fact the hairdresser of Marie Antoinette. I'm hopeful that in this overlap between the Rococo and the Colonial, we may find some things that we can take to daily life to help us understand and accept that we co-inhabit the same historical timeline as all of the other nations established by the Europeans in the global south, on lands that had for thousands of years been the traditional lands of other peoples, that the story of the great navigator turning up shortly afterwards, followed by a first fleet of dispossessors, can lead to reconciliation and can lead to an acknowledgement of the past in order to shape a better shared future.